Have you ever found yourself stuck mid-conversation, desperately searching for words while translating back and forth in your head? That frustrating moment when your brain works like a slow translator instead of flowing naturally in English. You're not alone. Millions of English learners worldwide share this exact struggle every day, desperately wishing they could just speak without that mental translation delay. Welcome to LMJ English, where we transform language learning into inspiring stories that change lives. Today, I'm thrilled to share the remarkable journey of someone who overcame this very challenge, speaking English without thinking, in just 21 days. This story isn't just educational. It's a roadmap to language freedom that could transform your own English fluency forever. Before we dive into this life-changing adventure, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss another story that could revolutionize your English learning journey. Your path to effortless English conversation starts right here, right now. Chapter 1. Meet Sarah's language struggles. Sarah Williams stared at her computer screen, her fingers hovering hesitantly over the keyboard. The weekly email to her international team should have taken minutes to write, but after 45 minutes she had barely completed 2 paragraphs. Each sentence required multiple revisions as she struggled to translate her thoughts from Vietnamese to English. This frustrating process had become all too familiar in her 3 years working for a multinational corporation. Despite studying English since childhood and scoring well on tests, Sarah's practical language skills remained trapped in what her colleagues politely called translation mode. During meetings, she would often fall silent while formulating responses, mentally converting each word before speaking. By the time she prepared her answer, the conversation had already moved on to another topic. Her brilliant ideas remained unshared, and her career advancement slowed despite her excellent technical skills. The breaking point came during an important video conference with potential clients from London. When asked a direct question about project timelines, Sarah froze. The familiar mental translation machine whirred into action, but under pressure, it completely jammed. After an awkward silence, her manager jumped in to rescue the situation. Later that evening, Sarah scrolled through social media, feeling defeated and searching for distraction from her embarrassment. That's when an unusual video caught her attention. Speak English without thinking in 21 days. Normally skeptical of such bold claims, something about this particular title resonated with her specific struggle. The linguist in the video explained how the brain forms language habits and how mental translation creates a neural bottleneck that prevents fluency. Most importantly, he described a systematic approach to rewire the brain in just 3 weeks through consistent daily practice. Sarah felt a spark of hope ignite within her. The approach seemed scientifically sound, focusing on creating new neural pathways rather than just accumulating more vocabulary or grammar rules. What did she have to lose? Her current methods clearly weren't working, and the possibility of finally expressing herself naturally in English seemed worth any effort. That night, Sarah made a commitment to herself. 21 days of dedicated practice following this method, no excuses. She created a detailed schedule in her planner, set daily reminders on her phone, and even told her roommate about the challenge to ensure accountability. Tomorrow would mark day 1 of her journey towards speaking English without the exhausting mental translation process. As she closed her laptop, Sarah felt something she hadn't experienced in her language learning journey for years: genuine excitement about what might be possible. Have you ever experienced the frustration of translating in your head while trying to speak English? Share your biggest language struggle in the comments below. Chapter 2. Understanding the Science of Language Habits. The early morning sunlight streamed through Sarah's apartment window as she sat at her kitchen table reviewing the science behind her 21-day challenge. A steaming cup of coffee sat untouched beside her notebook, as she became increasingly fascinated by the neurological aspects of language acquisition. The material explained how the brain processes language very differently in native versus learned languages. In native speakers, language processing occurs primarily in Broca's area and Wernicke's area, allowing for automatic, unconscious speech production. However, second language learners typically engage additional brain regions, including the prefrontal cortex, which handles conscious processing and translation. This extra step creates the delay Sarah knew all too well. The good news was that research indicated neural pathways could be rewired through consistent, focused practice. The 21-day time frame wasn't arbitrary, Sarah discovered. While modern research suggests habit formation varies widely between individuals, psychological studies confirmed that 3 weeks of consistent practice creates enough repetition for new neural connections to strengthen significantly. The key wasn't perfection but consistency. Daily practice would gradually reduce the brain's reliance on translation pathways and build direct connections between concepts and English expression. Sarah read about the concept of language chunking, where the brain begins to process phrases as single units rather than individual words. Native speakers don't construct sentences word by word, but instead draw from thousands of pre-assembled language chunks. The 21-day method would focus on developing this same chunking ability through specific daily exercises designed to bypass the translation process entirely. The material also explained why traditional language learning often fails to create fluency. Memorizing vocabulary lists and grammar rules engages the conscious analytical mind, perfect for exams but counterproductive for natural speech. Real fluency requires language to become procedural knowledge stored in the same brain regions that handle automatic skills like riding a bicycle or typing on a keyboard. These skills happen without conscious thought once properly learned. Most fascinating to Sarah was the explanation of why immersion works so effectively. When surrounded by a new language, the brain experiences productive failure, struggling unsuccessfully, until it abandons inefficient strategies and develops more direct processing pathways. The 21-day method would create controlled daily doses of this productive failure to stimulate neural adaptation without the overwhelm of actual immersion. Sarah closed the information packet, feeling both scientifically informed and emotionally motivated. Understanding the brain science transformed the challenge from a vague hope into a concrete process with biological principles supporting it. With this knowledge, her commitment deepened from curious experimentation to determined pursuit of neurological change. Do you believe understanding the science behind language learning makes the process more effective? What brain facts about language learning surprised you the most? Got an idea? Let us know in the comments below. Chapter 3. Days 1-7. Breaking Old Patterns. Day 1 began with Sarah feeling equal parts determined and doubtful as she started the first exercise, describing everyday objects aloud in English without using her native language as a mental reference. Standing in her bathroom, she pointed at items and forced herself to name them directly. Toothbrush, she said hesitantly, catching herself almost translating the word first. The exercise felt awkward and painfully slow compared to her usual. Translation method. By day 3, frustration mounted, as Sarah struggled with the daily speaking exercises that required describing her morning routine without pausing to translate. Each sentence came out fragmented and halting. I wake up, brush teeth, eat breakfast. The natural flow seemed impossible to achieve, and Sarah questioned whether the entire approach might be flawed. That evening, she nearly abandoned the program altogether, after a particularly difficult phone call with an English-speaking colleague. The turning point came unexpectedly on day 5 during the rapid response exercise, which required answering simple questions within 2 seconds. When the timer asked, "What did you eat for breakfast?" Sarah blurted out, "Toast and coffee," without translation. The moment passed quickly, but later she realized what had happened. She had responded automatically in English. Though just a tiny breakthrough, this small success renewed her motivation to continue the challenge. Sarah diligently practiced the recommended language shower technique every evening, playing English audio while performing routine tasks like cooking or cleaning. Initially, she comprehended very little without focusing intently on the words. However, by the end of the first week, she noticed her brain occasionally grasping phrases without conscious effort. These fleeting moments of direct understanding felt like glimpses of what might be possible. The daily journaling exercise proved particularly challenging but valuable. Writing her thoughts directly in English, without drafting in her native language, first resulted in simpler sentences than she would typically construct. Yet the process became gradually less painful, and Sarah noticed certain phrases beginning to come more naturally to mind. The journal entries documented not just her language progress, but also her emotional journey through frustration, doubt, small victories, and renewed determination. Week 1 concluded with the Thinking Aloud challenge, where Sarah had to narrate her thought process while solving a simple puzzle. Her speech remained hesitant and riddled with pauses, but comparing a recording from day 1 to day 7 revealed subtle improvements in fluidity. The constant English output, despite its imperfections, was beginning to create new mental pathways, just as the program had promised. That Sunday evening, Sarah reviewed her notes from the first week. The improvements were modest, certainly not the miraculous transformation part of her had secretly hoped for. But something fundamental had shifted. She had begun to experience brief moments of thinking directly in English rather than translating. These fleeting instances proved the method could work if she maintained her commitment through the coming weeks. What do you think is the hardest part about breaking old language habits? Have you ever experienced a small breakthrough moment that motivated you to keep learning? We'd love to hear your idea. Comment below. Chapter 4. Days 8 to 14. Building New Neural Pathways. The second week began with a noticeable shift in Sarah's approach to the daily exercises. Rather than viewing them as artificial practice sessions, she started integrating English thinking into random moments throughout her day. While waiting for the elevator, she would practice describing people walking by. During her commute, she silently narrated the scenes outside her window. These spontaneous micro-practices accumulated quickly, providing far more language processing repetitions than the formal exercises alone. On day 9, Sarah encountered her first real-world test, when a lost tourist asked for directions near her office building. Instead of freezing up as usual, she found herself responding with basic directions before she had time to feel anxious. The conversation wasn't perfect. She stumbled over explaining a complicated intersection, but the tourist understood and thanked her warmly. This successful interaction outside the safety of her practice sessions boosted her confidence tremendously. The most challenging exercise of week 2 required Sarah to watch short English videos and immediately summarize the content aloud. Initially, this dual processing task overwhelmed her completely. Her summaries came out as disconnected words rather than coherent sentences. By day 12, however, she could capture the main ideas without mentally translating the content first. This improvement demonstrated her brain was beginning to process English directly rather than through her native language filter. Sarah's colleagues began noticing subtle changes in her communication style during meetings. She contributed more frequently to discussions and responded more quickly when addressed directly. Though still careful with her word choice, the debilitating pauses that previously characterized her speech had shortened considerably. A co-worker even commented that her English sounded more natural lately, unaware of Sarah's intensive practice regimen. The midpoint of the challenge brought an unexpected emotional dip. Despite her progress, Sarah experienced a day of overwhelming doubt when she struggled to explain a complex work concept to her team. The old feelings of inadequacy resurfaced strongly, and she questioned whether 2 more weeks could possibly transform her speaking ability significantly enough to matter. That evening, she revisited the science behind the method, reminding herself that neural changes occurred gradually but consistently with continued practice. On day 14, Sarah completed the inner dialogue switch exercise, which involved maintaining an internal monologue in English for 30 minutes straight. Though her thoughts occasionally reverted to her native language, especially when considering complex topics, she managed to sustain English thinking far longer than seemed possible just a week earlier. This tangible evidence of progress renewed her determination to complete the full 21-day program. The second week ended with Sarah recording herself speaking about her work projects for 5 minutes without preparation. Comparing this recording to one from before starting the challenge revealed significant improvements in fluency, reduced pausing, and more complex sentence structures. Though not yet perfect, the difference was substantial enough to reinforce that the neural rewiring promised by the program was genuinely occurring within her brain. How have you incorporated language practice into your daily life? Can you think of creative ways to practice English thinking during ordinary activities? Please, leave your idea in the comments. Chapter 5. Days 15-21. Solidifying Natural English. The final week of Sarah's challenge began with a surprising dream. She had a conversation entirely in English while sleeping. Though she remembered only fragments upon waking, this subconscious language processing signaled deeper changes occurring in her brain. The program materials explained this phenomenon as evidence that English was becoming procedural rather than declarative knowledge, exactly the shift necessary for natural speech without translation. Day 16 involved the most intimidating exercise yet, a 30-minute conversation with a native English speaker without any preparation. Sarah arranged a video call with a language exchange partner from Canada. Initially nervous, she found herself responding more naturally than ever before. When her partner used unfamiliar expressions, Sarah successfully negotiated meaning within the conversation rather than becoming flustered. While not perfect, the interaction remained fluid and genuinely communicative throughout. By day 18, Sarah noticed she was catching mistakes in her English speech before voicing them, an ability previously impossible, while juggling both translation and speech monitoring simultaneously. This new self-correction happened intuitively rather than through conscious grammar analysis. During a team meeting, she confidently presented a project update, managing questions from colleagues without the panic that typically accompanied spontaneous English interactions. The most remarkable transformation occurred in Sarah's relationship with English entertainment. Previously, she had watched English movies with subtitles in her native language, constantly toggling between reading and listening. Now she found herself genuinely enjoying an English podcast during her commute, comprehending natural speech, without the exhausting mental translation that had made such activities feel like work rather than pleasure. On day 20, Sarah faced her biggest challenge, participating in an important client call that would have terrified her 3 weeks earlier. As the meeting progressed, she contributed ideas, asked clarifying questions, and even handled an unexpected disagreement with professional English that flowed naturally. Afterward, her manager complimented her confident communication, unaware of the intensive training that had enabled this transformation. The final day of the challenge arrived with a sense of both accomplishment and curiosity about what would happen next. Sarah completed the program's assessment activities, including reading a complex article aloud, participating in a rapid-fire question session, and explaining a complicated concept from her professional field. In all three tasks, her performance demonstrated significant improvement from where she had started just 3 weeks earlier. That evening, Sarah reviewed her journal entries from the entire challenge. The progression from halting translated speech to increasingly natural expression was clearly documented. While not yet at native-level fluency, she had broken through the translation barrier that had limited her English communication for years. Most importantly, she had established new neural pathways and daily habits that would continue strengthening her direct English thinking well beyond the formal 21-day program. What aspect of English fluency would make the biggest difference in your personal or professional life? Have you noticed any dreams or subconscious thinking in English during your learning journey? Tell us your idea in the comments below. Chapter 6. Beyond 21 days, maintaining your new skills. 1 month after completing her intensive 21-day challenge, Sarah sat in a coffee shop reflecting on the sustainable practices she had established to maintain her newfound English fluency. Rather than returning to her old language habits, she had created a balanced routine that integrated continual English practice into her everyday life without the exhausting intensity of the initial program. Her morning ritual now included 15 minutes of English thinking while preparing breakfast, consciously narrating her activities without slipping back into translation mode. Sarah had discovered that consistency mattered more than duration. Daily shorter practice sessions proved more effective for maintaining her neural pathways than occasional marathon study sessions. She established English zones throughout her week, specific contexts where she committed to thinking exclusively in English regardless of difficulty. Her commute, workout time, and cooking sessions had all become reliable English immersion opportunities without requiring additional time commitment. The social aspect of language maintenance surprised Sarah with its importance. She joined an international book club that met weekly to discuss English novels, providing regular conversation practice with supportive peers. Unlike her previous hesitation in group settings, she now contributed actively to discussions, knowing that maintaining her English thinking required regular social usage. These friendships added enjoyment to what previously felt like obligatory practice. Technology played a crucial role in Sarah's continued progress. She customized her phone's newsfeed to include English sources aligned with her interests, ensuring daily reading practice felt relevant rather than academic. Her streaming services recommendations now featured almost exclusively English content, and she found herself understanding humor and cultural references that would have confusing just months earlier. These small environmental changes maintained consistent exposure without feeling like study. Perhaps most significantly, Sarah had transferred the principles from her English learning journey to other areas of personal development. The neuroplasticity concepts she learned through language acquisition now informed how she approached new professional skills and habits. Understanding how consistent practice rewired neural pathways gave her confidence in tackling other challenging learning curves within her career with similar systematic approaches. Occasionally, Sarah still encountered complex situations where she felt the old translation impulse returning, particularly when extremely tired or stressed. Rather than becoming discouraged, she now recognized these moments as natural parts of the ongoing learning process. She developed recovery strategies for these instances, such as slowing her speech slightly or focusing on expressing core meanings rather than perfect phrasing until the direct English thinking resumed. Most remarkably, Sarah found herself occasionally thinking in English even in situations where no external practice was occurring. Random thoughts, mental calculations, or internal debates sometimes happened in English, without conscious choice, demonstrating how thoroughly the new neural pathways had established themselves. What began as a focused 21-day challenge had evolved into a genuine linguistic transformation that continued strengthening itself through daily life. How do you think you could integrate English practice into your existing daily routines? What strategies might help maintain language skills over the long term without requiring extensive additional time? Don't keep it to yourself. Share your idea in the comments. Conclusion: Sarah's 21-day transformation. The evening sun cast a warm glow through the office windows as Sarah finished presenting her department's quarterly results to the company executives. Questions followed her presentation, and she addressed each one with confident, natural English that flowed without hesitation. As the meeting concluded, the CEO specifically commended not just her impressive results, but also her clear communication style. Sarah smiled, thinking about how impossible this scenario would have seemed just months earlier. The 21-day challenge that Sarah had skeptically begun had indeed transformed her relationship with English, though not through magical thinking or empty promises. The structured program had systematically rewired her brain's approach to language processing, breaking the translation habit that had limited her for years. The changes occurred gradually through consistent practice rather than overnight transformation, building neural pathways that strengthened with each day's exercises. Most importantly, Sarah discovered that language fluency wasn't about knowing more words or memorizing more grammar rules. True fluency emerged from creating direct connections between thoughts and English expression, bypassing the intermediary step of translation. This neurological shift made speaking feel effortless rather than exhausting, turning English from a foreign tool into a natural extension of her thinking process. The benefits extended far beyond improved communication skills. Sarah's confidence in professional settings soared as the anxiety surrounding English interactions diminished. Career opportunities previously avoided due to language concerns now seemed accessible. Social connections with international colleagues deepened through more authentic conversations. Even her enjoyment of English entertainment increased as it transformed from study material into genuine pleasure. While the 21-day structured program had ended, Sarah's journey with English continued evolving. The daily habits established during those 3 focused weeks had become natural parts of her routine, maintaining and strengthening her language skills without conscious effort. What began as a desperate attempt to overcome a career limitation had blossomed into a transformative experience that enhanced multiple aspects of her life. As you reflect on Sarah's journey, consider your own relationship with English or any language you're learning. The neural pathways that currently make speaking feel difficult can be rewired through consistent, focused practice. With just 21 days of dedicated effort, you too might break free from the translation barrier and experience the freedom of thinking and speaking directly in a new language. Your brain is remarkably adaptable. You simply need to give it the right conditions for change. Are you ready to begin your own 21-day journey to speaking English without thinking? The transformation that Sarah experienced is available to anyone willing to commit to the process. The only question is, will you take the first step? Thank you so much for joining us on this inspiring journey of language transformation. If Sarah's story resonated with you, remember that your own path to speaking English without thinking starts with that first day of consistent practice. Why not begin your 21-day challenge today? If you found this story valuable, Please take a moment to like this video and share it with someone who might be struggling with the same language barriers. Your support helps our community grow and enables us to create more content that transforms English learning from frustration to freedom. Don't forget to subscribe to LMJ English for more inspiring stories that make language learning enjoyable and effective. Hit that notification bell so you never miss our weekly uploads of graded readers designed specifically to boost your English fluency. Until next time, keep practicing, be patient with yourself, and remember, your brain is rewiring itself with every English conversation you have. See you in our next story. Essential vocabulary from Speak English Without Thinking in 21 Days. Fluency. Noun. The ability to speak a language easily, smoothly, and expressively. Example: Sarah's goal was to achieve fluency without having to translate in her head. Mental. Translation. Noun. The process of converting words from one language to another in your mind before speaking. Example: mental translation was slowing down Sarah's conversation skills significantly. Neural pathways. Noun. Connections between neurons in the brain that form through repeated experiences or learning. Example: the 21-day challenge aimed to create new neural pathways for direct English thinking. Immersion. Noun. The practice of surrounding yourself completely with a language to learn it naturally. Example: Sarah created mini immersion experiences throughout her day to strengthen her English skills. Procedural knowledge. Noun. Information that is stored in memory as a procedure or skill rather than as facts. Example: Sarah needed to transform her English from conscious facts to procedural knowledge for natural speech. Hesitation. Noun. A pause or delay before doing something, often due to uncertainty. Example: the frequent hesitations in Sarah's speech decreased as she practiced thinking directly in English. Breakthrough. Noun. A sudden, significant development or achievement. Example: answering a question without translating was Sarah's first major breakthrough in the program. Consistency. Noun. The quality of always behaving or performing in a similar way. Example: the program emphasized that consistency was more important than perfection for rewiring the brain. Neuroplasticity. Noun. The brain's ability to form new connections and reorganize itself throughout life. Example: Sarah learned that neuroplasticity made it possible to change language habits even as an adult. Transformation. Noun. A complete change in someone or something. Example: the 21-day challenge resulted in a remarkable transformation of Sarah's English speaking abilities. Linguistic. Adjective. Relating to language or linguistics. Example: the linguistic benefits of the program extended beyond just speaking to include comprehension and thinking. Spontaneous. Adjective. Performed, or occurring without premeditation or external stimulus. Example: Sarah gradually developed the ability for spontaneous English conversation without preparation. Sustainable. Adjective. Able to be maintained at a certain level or rate. Example: after the challenge, Sarah focused on creating sustainable habits to maintain her new language skills. Intimidating. Adjective. Causing fear or anxiety. Difficult to deal with confidently. Example: speaking with native English speakers was initially intimidating for Sarah. Rewiring. Verb. To change the way something operates, especially the brain. Example: the daily exercises were specifically designed for rewiring how Sarah's brain processed English. Integrate. Verb. To combine one thing with another so they work together effectively. Example: Sarah learned to integrate English practice into her everyday routines. Monitor. Verb. To observe and check progress or quality over time. Example: as her skills improved, Sarah could monitor her own speech and catch mistakes before saying them Accumulate, verb, to gather or acquire gradually. Example, the brief practice sessions throughout the day accumulated into significant learning time. Negotiate, verb, to find a way through or around an obstacle. Example, when encountering unfamiliar words, Sarah learned to negotiate meaning. Through context rather than translation, resurfaced, verb, to appear again after being hidden or inactive. Example, occasionally Sarah's old habit of translation resurfaced when she was extremely tired.